I play a lot of video games, and I often find myself browsing the Steam store looking for new games. Sometimes I purchase a game and I'm like, yeah, I'm totally gonna play that game soon, but I almost always get busy and I completely forget that it exists. Oddly enough, there are some people who are proud of this. I've seen my fair share of posts on the internet of people bragging about their huge library of games that they will never have enough time to play. It's a lot like a bookworm who can't stop buying books, or a drug addict who buys so many different drugs that he never has time to try them all, but he will always have time for his favorite. Attempted jokes aside, I've done this before. Combine that with the fact that I bought Humble Monthly, a monthly subscription service where you get a bunch of random games for a few months. I actually have quite a few games in my library that I've never played. One such game is AER, Memories of Old, an indie action-adventure game developed by Forgotten Key, where you get to explore an open world and experience a rich story. Is that enough gaming buzzwords for you? In AER, you play as a shapeshifter who can turn into a bird. You use these powers to go on an adventure across the destroyed and scattered remains of the world, which is a series of floating islands. Your job is to go on a pilgrimage to the land of the gods and uncover the secrets that will help save reality itself. From this point on in the video, I'd like to split it into three main parts. First, I'd like to discuss the stuff I liked, then I'll move on to the stuff I didn't, and then I'll have a conclusion of sorts with a few added details thrown in as well. I played this game completely blind, with the only thing that I knew going in was that you could turn into a bird. The very first thing I noticed when I loaded it up was a sense of weightlessness when moving and jumping. You have a slightly extended and floaty jump, and your character kind of skips around when you move. The flying in this game is extremely fun and well crafted. The game has full controller support, but I played on keyboard and mouse. You can jump and press E to shapeshift, and you can change back with E at any moment. You move around when flying with WASD, and can bank left or right with the left and right mouse button. A fair amount of this game is flying, and while it's simple, it works great and makes moving between the islands interesting. The islands and the environment are gorgeous. The entire game is. The color palette is visually pleasing and vibrant. The greens are gorgeous, the reds are radiant, the oranges are ornate, and the blues are beautiful. Yeah, that's right, I can alliterate, so what? As the game progresses, everything turns to a white as the weather gets colder. I can honestly say that the environment is very compelling and beautiful. The lighting is also really good, especially for the temple sections. The game doesn't have so much of a story as it does a lore in my opinion. You spend a lot of time looking for scrolls and other environmental clues that give you an idea of the old gods and how the world came to be what it is today. And there's a fair amount of this stuff. It's obvious to me that there is a clear vision for the world and lore, and I have to commend the efforts here, especially for a game this short. Exploration itself is fun, especially since things are just so much fun to look at. Flying around and getting a bird's eye view is something I don't think I've seen implemented this well before. This added with the fact that you get to see memories of people on the different islands, exploration and the lore go hand in hand. The soundtrack for this game is astonishing! It honestly had no right to be this good, and I have nothing but praise for it. Hearing the music swell as I was flying around was just beautiful. The sound design in this game is also great. The sounds of the clouds, the animals, waterfalls, dripping water, and wind, just to name a few, are all phenomenal. This entire game was a treat for my ears. I wanted to put the good section of this video at the beginning because I wanted to make it clear that this game has a lot of good aspects. Because now, I'm going to tear into it like I tear into myself for my own failings. That is to say, often and with extreme disdain. As I said earlier, the first thing I noticed was the movement's feeling of weightlessness. That's a true statement, but that feeling soon gave way to another feeling. You see, outside of your bird form, when you're just moving around, you can only do two things. Walk around with WASD and jump. This is extremely basic and bare bones, but that's fine. This game is mostly about flying, and those controls don't need to be super complex. Yeah, that's what I thought too, until the game decided to spend half of its total runtime in that base form. Let me explain a little further. The game's main objective is to obtain all 3 fragments of great power. The game's name, not mine. There is a temple for each of these fragments, and to get into each temple, you must find a key. Obtaining each key and going through each temple has you solving light puzzles to finish each. Emphasis on light there, but we'll get to that later. This is all fine, but there's one key issue here. Inside of each temple and each key room, you cannot shapeshift. Let me repeat that. For the main objectives of this game, you can't use its main mechanic. This is all made worse by the fact that the game seems to want to turn into a platformer in these sections, having you jump around in different areas and climbing up and down crevices that are difficult for your character to traverse. Except they shouldn't be. I can fly, game! Maybe this wouldn't be so bad if the game had some interesting mechanics when you're in your base form. I honestly think that some of these issues could have been alleviated by some kind of double jump or running jump or even just something along those lines. Or, better yet, let the player fly in these sections and build the puzzles around the flight. You know, the main selling point of the game? And on that point, let's talk about the puzzles. Except calling them puzzles is like calling 2 + 2 a math problem, because both are so easy only a literal child could be confused by them. Like, look at this. Who is this for? Who is challenged or engaged by this? Why is this taking time away from flying? Literally, what the fuck? The temple sections are easily the worst part of this game. They range from okay to boring to downright awful at times. At the end of each temple, you find some sort of fragment guardian. Each of these has an interesting design and is honestly intriguing to me, but they're on screen for like half a minute max before they disappear and die forever. Cool. It's at this point I want to talk about the lore of the game. Like I said in the good section of this video, I think there was a clear vision and a lot of work done to make it as interesting as possible. That being said, I personally didn't find it too interesting. The spirit animals were cool, but the lore just didn't capture my interest. I think it might be because most of it is told through literal text walls. This is fine in principle, many games use just text for dialogue and books, but in general, I don't like it. Also, most of this game's lore is only told through scrolls, not dialogue. There are only really 4 NPCs in this game to talk to, and they're all pretty boring. Overall though, I'm not gonna fault the game too much for a lore I just didn't enjoy. I just wanted to mention my thoughts on it. The game does make some attempts at environmental storytelling. When flying around, I noticed that an animal had been killed by a rock, and I thought that was really cool that I noticed this. I wondered why the rock had killed the animal, and where the story would go with that. By the 20th time I saw this thing, I audibly said, "Oh fuck you," and it never goes anywhere. When exploring, the game has a lot of little points of interest that you can find. Sometimes these have scrolls to read, but for the most part, they're just there to look at. Some of these I thoroughly enjoyed. My main problem with this, though, is that almost every single one of these is followed by an achievement telling you that you found something cool. I just kind of wish the game could give me more credit than I can give it. Let's talk about flying real quick. Like I said, the flying is fun, but landing isn't. You have zero control of your character when you exit bird form, so you have to correctly position yourself before you shapeshift back. Oftentimes, you're going so fast, you overshoot an entire island. Some might consider this added depth. I consider it a waste of my time. It's not fun, it's not adding anything, it just adds frustration to a game that people call relaxing. Also, the game doesn't do the best job explaining its controls. I gave it credit earlier that getting a bird's eye view was fun. This is true, but I didn't know you could really do it until the last hour of the game. See, if you hold the left and right mouse button at the same time, both your wings will expand like you're trying to bank, and thus slow you down. It never tells you this is possible. Some may like this eureka moment, but this was only frustrating for me. I had infinitely more fun exploring the world as a bird, and this made the landing issue less prevalent. And if anyone thinks the controls here are self-evident, I'm sorry I've never been a bird before. There are a number of glitches I experienced in my playthrough. First, the game has this weird issue where you get stuck on objects that stops you from jumping. It's really annoying. Also, the camera randomly spazzes out sometimes. It seems to not like you trying to look over edges, because that would be a terrible thing to do in a third-person game. I mean, look at this! Why is the camera doing this? After about playing for 2 hours, I decided I needed to go to bed and that I would finish playing it the next day. I hit save and went to exit. The game said that any unsaved data would be lost, and I was like, that's fine, I just saved. I did this partway through the second temple. I loaded up the game the next day, and I was sent back to the beginning of the temple. Something as basic as the save button is broken, and this made me spend more time not flying. At the end of the third temple, I was getting kind of bored of the game, but I knew I was getting close to finishing. I finished the last puzzle, and the door to the Guardian opened. I walked towards it and immediately fell through the floor. I fell for about 2 minutes hoping that the game would reset, but it didn't. I went back to the main menu, loaded up my save, and the game started me back from the beginning of the temple. If I wasn't playing this game for a review, I probably would have stopped playing right there. At that point, I wasn't angry, I was just disappointed. Like any proud parent should be. Good job, Slick. Throughout playing this game, after each time you get a fragment, you get a vision of, well, whatever this thing is. Also, I'm pretty sure the first 3 visions are exactly the same. At the end of the game, you fly to one last temple, and you get a cutscene where the light from your lantern goes into your arm. Touch the creature, and the game ends. What the fuck? If you would ask me right after I finished playing how I felt about it, I'd probably say it was an okay game with a cool flying mechanic that I would only recommend to people who enjoy that sort of thing. I had a lot of issues with this game, and I don't think I would ever revisit it. When I make these kind of videos, I like to look up things about development to see if I can get a deeper understanding of the game and how it was made. When I started to do that research for this video, I couldn't find anything out about development, but I did find some things about the developer, Forgotten Key. Forgotten Key was created in 2013 and is a Swedish indie developer. AER was released in 2017 and was their first game. This recontextualized the game for me a bit. For the first outing of an indie developer, it was really good. This made me very excited to see what they could do with a sequel or a new IP, because I have to believe in second chances considering the first video on my channel. Games. How are you game. Then I found out that the studio closed down in January 2019 due to an inability to, quote, find the next project and to fit in with how the market moves and to try to find ways to sustain a growing studio. I was surprised at how hard this news hit me. I had my problems with AER, but I was genuinely excited to see what the studio would bring next. They released demos for the 2 projects they had been working on. I decided to play them to see what the future for this studio could have been. The first demo is Vind, a sort of spiritual successor to AER that is set in an entirely new world and story, but continues on with the gameplay established in AER, that is the flying and the broken islands to explore. The demo took me about an hour and a half to complete, mostly because I'm a dumbass and didn't realize there was a mechanic I completely missed from the controls menu. For people with an IQ above 50, this will probably take closer to 50 minutes to complete. The flight controls are basically the same as in AER, but these demos can only be played with a controller. There are some additional mechanics though. First, there are a bunch of yellow orbs in the air that, if you press triangle or Y, you can spin in the air and gain some speed. You also have a bit more control of your character when you exit bird form and go into freefall, which is nice. You also have the ability to gain speed simply by going up and down in the air. There's a real sense of gravity here and it feels incredibly fluid. Honestly, it's one of those things that you don't realize you want until you have it. Other than flying, there are a multitude of new features. The game finds you taking quests from NPCs on a main island, with the goal of completing all of the side quests to continue on with the main quest. These quests are generally simple: place a thing on an altar,
find crayons out in the world, or talk to an NPC at a certain time. But these work great to create a sort of feedback loop with exploration. I know this is a demo, but I think this creates a more compelling reason to explore than in AER.
There are some more things introduced that mesh well with exploration and quests. There's a crafting mechanic. As you explore, you can pick up crafting components around the world: wood, stone, flowers, cotton, etc. Some of these are used to craft buildings on the main island. Others are used for cooking. One of the quests asks you to cook a specific food item for an NPC. When cooking, you need to make sure that none of the items burn or fall out. There's also a day-night cycle. Both look beautiful, but I was struck by how fun it was to explore during the night. The NPCs even go to sleep during the night. At one point, I had finished a quest, and I couldn't find the NPC I needed to talk to, and it took me like 2 minutes looking around before I realized that they were asleep. That's a pretty cool detail. There's even more. There's a new way to interact with objects in the world. You can use your powers to make items levitate or to push items. This is the mechanic that I had missed when I was playing initially, but I ended up figuring it out. The main puzzle of the game is so much better than the puzzles in the original because it integrates the flying into it. You need to get a stone ball from one side of an island to another island without dropping it. I had to fly around and plan my path accordingly, then try to use that information I had gained to take it across. It's not groundbreaking, but it's much better than AER. I feel I should mention that the opening and ending cutscenes are both beautiful, and they had a lot of attention to detail and care put into them. They also piqued my interest much more than AER did. Very rarely do developers take something successful in a first game and drastically improve and expand it. The Vind demo does this. Who knows how the actual game would have come out, and whether or not any of the features shown would be taken out, but it's clear to me that improving upon AER was important to them. This demo fixed many of the issues I had with AER, and introduced many things I didn't even think about. The second demo is Down the Well. Down the Well is a game inspired by Scandinavian folklore, and takes about 20 minutes to finish. The game's main mechanic is the light stick. You can pull it out with the right arrow on the D-pad, and you have to keep it lit with square. This is your main light source in the game. You also need to collect resources for crafting. You can collect wheat with the scythe that you pull out with left arrow on the D-pad. You can also collect stone and other special crafting materials. The main story of the demo follows Tay as she tries to get an audience with the Warden of the Forest. Once you find her, she asks you to investigate her burning forest and who did it. At this point, the game introduces its... No, there's no way we kept this in the script, right? This is a joke, right? This is super dumb. What do you mean we kept... Why did we keep it in? Oh, God. Key mechanic. No, I mean its literal key mechanic. You are given a key that you can use to open any door, and it brings you back to the Warden, and the end of the demo follows you crafting another one of these keys. Down the Well sucked me in within the first few minutes of playing it. The demo felt so short and so long at the same time. They packed in a lot of content in those 20 minutes, with a lot of interesting mechanics and lore already being introduced. The visuals are distinctly dark, damp, and dreary, and it sells the whole package. It's obvious to me, after playing through these demos, that Forgotten Key was a developer with a lot of creative ideas and love for their craft. It's because of this that I'm filled with a genuine sadness after learning that they closed down. They had a hit with AER. The game won many awards and has an 88% positive rating on Steam. I've been very critical of their game in this video, but I think it's important to remember that AER was the first game they ever developed. After playing the two demos, I have little doubt that they would have improved with every game and made a fan out of me. At the end of these kinds of videos, generally people in my position are supposed to propose some kind of solution to stop Forgotten Key from being shut down, or to at the very least bring some kind of positive spin, but I really don't have either for you. Forgotten Key shut down more than a year ago, and I'm sure that most of the people who were on the team have moved on. Forgotten Key is gone, and the gaming industry is worse for it. I suppose if you do want to try and do something, maybe go share a nice tweet with @ForgottenKeySE on Twitter. It sounds like the two founders run the Twitter account and keep AER alive. Maybe just letting them know that the work matters is enough. I want to thank you for watching this video. Again, this outro isn't scripted. I think that this video turned out much better than the Walking Dead one. I think that the script is a little bit tighter, and perhaps maybe easier to watch. Let me know if you thought I improved. If you haven't seen the first video on this channel, go ahead and give it a watch if you enjoy this kind of content. It's on The Walking Dead, Telltale's Walking Dead. I think it's good, but it's a first video, so it's a little shaky. I'll put the links to the 2 demos I mentioned in this game at the link in the description. I'll also include the article that talks about Forgotten Keys shutting down. Also, I'll link their Twitter. If you want to look at any of those things I talked about in this video, go ahead and check the description. AER was a game that I had some problems with, and I think I was very critical in this video, maybe even too critical. But I think that ultimately, Forgotten Key, it's just really unfortunate that they shut down, and I am sad. I said that in the video, and I do mean that. I plan on doing more videos like this. I've timed this video series the Lost Games because I have a lot of games in my just Steam store or library, I should say, that I haven't played, and I think it'd be cool to kind of go through them one by one. I wanted to try and make this video a little shorter, but looking at the runtime, I think I failed in that massively. So, yeah, let me know if you think I should try to make my videos even shorter. I do like longer videos, but I wanted this to be a sort of buffer in between the Modern Warfare 2 video and other stuff. The next video will be Modern Warfare 2. I am already in pre-production, and I'm already writing the script, so no idea when that'll come out, but probably, like, not super long out. I'm really having fun making these videos, and I hope that you enjoy watching them, and this outro is way too long, so I will talk to you guys later. Have a good one.